Hi, everyone. Continuing with part 2 of our series, The Confident Bride. I'm Kathy Bull, owner of Planet With Me, and I'm joined by Zoe Madona, one of our 2025 brides. Hi, Zoe.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And since you're joining us for part 2, we will assume you've watched part 1. If you haven't, we do recommend that you click the link below in the description to go back and watch part 1 as we talk there about how she got started in the wedding planning process, where part 2 is really how to tackle the process. So it's best if you watch that one first. But regardless, we're glad you're here and hope that this series provides you with the information you need to go naturally and confidently into your wedding planning process. And so with that, let's talk about how you tackled the wedding planning process, Zoe. So share with us what you did next, which was hire your vendors. So how did you decide how to hire your vendors?
Yeah, so with the vendors, I really started with the curated vendor list that I received from you. But when I was researching all of the vendors, I really stuck to clear examples of their work. And if it was at my same venue, that was always a bonus too. Because I think with, Instagram and Pinterest, it can create some unrealistic expectations about what real weddings look like. And so
Yes.
I always tended to stick with the vendor's own website and their own Instagram page to see clear examples of their work. And that really helped me envision what my day could look like as well.
That's a great point, because we do give, depending on the service level you get from us, we do provide this curated vendor list. And while we want your Pinterest board, because those are important, that's a great place to gather all these inspo photos that you've been collecting. We want that. We compare that with your budget to create this curated vendor list, and curated being the key word. It's curated specifically for you so that we know the vendors we're recommending can stay within your budget and accomplish the vision that you have on Pinterest. And so I think that's important for couples to know, because it's so easy to go down that Pinterest, Instagram
Oh, yeah.
wormhole.
Yeah, I think I even did that a few times where I just started seeing things that I liked, and then I would end up on some website telling me that it was a styled shoot, and then that kind of changed my idea of what I wanted.
It's so hard because what you see on Pinterest is, for sure, most of that is really, really styled out. Now, you might get down to the brides that DIY'd something and shared something from their personal pages, but the images that come up are so often like really, really elaborate styled shoots, and they're not within the, dare I say, average bride's budget, because most people don't have that kind of money to spend. Weddings are very expensive, and it doesn't take long for you to $100 yourself or $1,000 yourself to death.
Yeah, definitely. So I just tried to stay with the vendors themselves.
Okay, so once you took that vendor list and you knew who you were going to hire, let's talk about what those vendors did that helped make the process smoother for you.
Yeah, so I think there were two main things that vendors did to really just help make everything feel easy and I think thought out as well for me. So one was when vendors really provided their own advice. And I really leaned on the vendor's advice as well, because in my mind, they're the expert on the topic. And, it was my only wedding, but they're doing hundreds of weddings. And so I always like to ask their opinion whenever I had a question about something. And that really helped inform every decision that I made. And then also when vendors helped me understand what I needed to be doing at the start of the process versus what really could wait. And I think that really was the case with a lot of the decor pieces as well, because, I started planning about a year and a half out.
Yeah.
And so I was scared about making decor decisions at that point, and then getting to a month before the wedding and realizing that that is not what I wanted anymore. And so having vendors that really were clear with me about saying, you shouldn't even think about that now, just wait, was super helpful.
Yeah, and you did that. You changed everything about
I did.
a month and a half out from your wedding date, which is totally fine. And I think we talked about this in part 1, where be confident in making a decision to keep the process moving, but know that you can make changes. And this is exactly what we're talking about. You had a very clear idea of what you wanted early on. And so you made those decisions, you made your selections on different things, whatever the decision was. And then you got closer. And I think you hired us about 15 months out. So for, this purpose, let's say a year and a half. Who you are a year and a half ago as to who you are a year and a half later is two very different people. They've got
For sure.
styles have changed. I hate the word trends, but trends have changed. So like even what you like may have changed. And for you, it did.
Definitely. And I mean, I even think back to what I was thinking of like when I very first started planning, and that is not what I ended up with. But I mean, everything turned out beautifully and exactly how I
Yeah,
wanted
and a
it.
lot of it was really similar. So you didn't drastically change, but
Hmm.
you changed just little things that changed that I think flowed along with just the style evolution as you had gone through the process. So I think
Definitely.
that's really key to understand is that it's okay to make those changes, but lean on your vendors, trust that process, and listen to kind of the guidance they're giving you because you're going to have all your big decisions up front, then you're going to have a little bit of a lull, then you're going to refine your decisions.
Hmm.
Do you feel like you had that lull period too?
I did. I remember getting on calls with you during that lull period and feeling lost about what I was supposed to be doing. And I just remember you saying that there was going to be that lull and it was okay that I wasn't doing anything. And so I think trusting in you during that time that everything was going to get done. And there was just a period of time where there was nothing to do.
Yeah, the lull is hard. It's hard
It
to say.
was.
The lull is hard. And we try to tell everybody that you're gonna feel that. Everybody's gonna
Hmm.
feel that. Now your lull may be a week, somebody else's might be 2 months, especially the lull over the holidays. I had to tell every one of my clients, I'm like, from Thanksgiving to New Year's, you're gonna feel like you've been abandoned. But you haven't. Like if you text us, we're there. We're often working in the background on things. And so
Hmm.
it may feel like a lull for you, but your vendors are working on other weddings that are coming up. They're working on little details for your wedding in the background, making sure things are staying on target. So it feels like a lull, but it's not. Okay, so we've talked about how you got started with your vendors and what they did to make the process smoother. Now let's talk about what they did to maybe make some of the things a little more challenging. And not that they're
Yeah.
going out of their way, but vendors can unintentionally make things challenging and not even know it. So
Hmm.
here we could probably give some vendors some tips, but also give our couple some tips on what to expect.
Yeah. So I think one of the main things early on in the process that made it feel a bit more challenging is right when I hired all of my vendors, and then the vendor didn't really give clear expectations of what the process was going to look like from then. So, I mean, I really think to lighting and dance floor, things that really just needed to wait until right before the
Yeah.
wedding, but I I never really had that guidance. And so even, a message within the payment confirmation email of thank you so much for booking, we'll talk to you 30 days out would have been super helpful for me to create a timeline for myself.
That makes a ton of sense because as planners, we know that. Like we get your contract and we see the payment terms and we see, this has to be done by this date and this has to be done by this date. But if you're not used to it, and of course, again, we've talked about this, you're not supposed to be used to this process. So if that vendor and let's pick on the dance floor companies for no other reason other than this is one of those things that you would hire the dance floor company right up front. You rent your dance floor. Well, there's not really anything else you have to do
Yeah.
with that unless you make a change, from wanting a LED floor to a white dance floor. There's not a lot of changes to make. So you hire this vendor and then what happens? And
Mhm.
so I can see where even in their confirmation email, that would have been helpful to say, okay, great, we got your deposit. 45 days out, we'll be in touch to check in and make sure all of your plans are swimming along. And then from a planner standpoint, even to know that that's something that you noticed,
Mhm.
we can now help other couples. We can share that information with them, and even here let them know that that's perfectly normal because you're going to be talking to your planner, you're going to be talking to your photographer on and off, you're going to be talking to your caterer, but there's a chunk of vendors, dance floor, lighting that you might not be talking to throughout the process. And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. And I think it really only came up with those vendors where I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. And so I think that guidance would have been a bit more helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that. And then one of you brought up something really interesting to me about what vendors do. Again, this is an unintentional thing, but it was like a huge light bulb went off for me when you said this.
Yeah.
So
So I
yeah.
think a big challenge for me throughout the process was just not knowing certain, I guess, wedding or vendor lingo. And,
Hmm.
no one ever expected me to know certain things. And I never felt pressured or uncomfortable in asking, what does that mean? But I think it would have been helpful if I had almost a dictionary going in of, okay, these are common things that you might run into, and this is what it
And
means.
this makes so much sense because when I very first got started in events, I remember somebody said BEO to me, and I'm like, what
Hmm.
is that? And so I'm scrambling to figure out what it is because there's not somebody walking alongside of you saying, oh, like that's interpreting almost. That's what
Hmm.
this means. This is what they're saying. So when you told me that that was something that would have been helpful when I asked you, how is this on your side? What kind of feedback can you give us? And you said that, I'm like, duh, that makes so much sense. And because of you, like we're putting that together now to put in our welcome guide because it just makes so much sense. So tell me a little bit about what some of the things were that really tripped you up because there were a couple things you pointed out.
Yeah, so I think lighting was a big one for me, just not knowing the difference between the different types of lighting and what was necessary for my event. I think another really big one was around florals and specifically vases, because before this entire process, a vase was a vase to me. And
Right?
I didn't know that there could be, that they were called containers or compotes or anything like that. And
And
so,
that's the word that kills me. Compote to this
yeah.
day still kills me because I hear compote and I think jams and jellies. I don't think florals
Yeah, well,
to this
and
day.
especially when they said containers, I thought, "Oh, are we talking about Tupperware?" Or I was just so lost, and so that was another
Because
really
you
big
grow
one
up
for
with
me.
flowers going in vases.
Mhm.
They don't, yeah. And so again, this just makes so much sense. So we're putting up on the screen just some graphics that show the difference because when you talk about lighting, we often talk about pin spots, uplights, table washes. And I can again see where when you hear all that, a pin spot is a beam of light, a focused point of light that hits a specific piece of decor, oftentimes your floral centerpieces or your cake. And it's so that once you've turned the dinner lights down a little bit, you've got those pieces of decor will pop. And so that light focuses in on those. Uplights sit on the floor and shoot light up. And then table washes are kind of like the lighting we have here in the studio, where it's washing color or light over a particular object. So often like a head table, so that all of the head table is lit and can see. And it's not obtrusive lighting. It's all very ambient decor lighting. And so those types of things are so important, can change the whole look of it. So we talk to everybody about lighting, but then we don't ever think to tell them really what these things are. We're just like, you
Mhm.
need these things,
Mhm.
when it would be helpful if you knew why. And then vases, now you have all this vase lingo that you didn't know you needed. So containers,
Compotes.
the trumpet vases. Did you know what a trumpet vase was?
Not
Not
before the
before. So now,
wedding.
even like Harlow stands, like those are very, very common. Those are the gold four-post stands that you see on
Mhm.
centerpiece on tables. And a lot of times you'll see flowers from the ceremony get repurposed to a table that's on a taller stand. Harlow stands are one, trumpet vases are others that lift the arrangement up. So again, it's just the education of that. And we pride ourselves on education. So it's so good to think about this from a dictionary standpoint. What were some of the other ones? Because lighting and candles were two big ones, but then you also shared that
Tables were a big one
tables.
for me as well. A table, again, similar to vases, a table is a table to me, and I didn't know that there were quite so many different types of tables, so that was interesting to learn for
Yeah,
sure.
because you think there's a round table, there's a rectangle table,
Yep.
and that's pretty much it, right?
Mhm.
But even into the wedding business, you learned that there's a 6-foot banquet table, there's a 4-foot table, there's an 8-foot table, and there's an 8-foot banquet, there's an 8-foot farmhouse, there's a serpentine table, there's a caterpillar table. And again, if people are throwing these words at you and you don't know what they are, again, up on the screen here, we're showing some examples of what these things are. Because another one that you mentioned were candles.
Yes, lots of different types of candles. There were votives, there were taper, and I remember sitting on a call with my florist and just saying, "Can you please just go through all the different types?" Because she was kind of just throwing out all the different names, and I just wanted to know more and
Yeah.
have a really full understanding.
And candles is probably one of the things that most people would know more. But even that, I mean, when you hear tapers, votives, pillars,
Hmm.
sand candles now are a thing, and people don't understand what sand candles are. And yeah, this is so helpful. And so I think, you can give yourself kudos for that. But because of this, we're seriously like all the new welcome guides that we're giving to our clients will now have a wedding/vendor lingo dictionary in it. So that's been really, really helpful. And then one of the other things that you mentioned about kind of what that made things more challenging is when you just had too many options.
Yeah, definitely. I really think back to when I first met with my caterer and I went to their showroom and I walked in and I was just told to pick what I liked, but there were probably hundreds and hundreds of every single thing. I mean, hundreds of plates, hundreds of forks and knives and everything. And it was honestly just overwhelming
Yeah.
because, yes, I could pick a color that I liked, but then once I picked a color, then there were 20 more options that I could choose from. And I had no context whether or not those options were within my budget, not within my budget. And so it was definitely overwhelming when I was given too many options.
Yeah, it is overwhelming. It's overwhelming as a planner because
Mhm.
you want to talk about like making a decision or having decision fatigue. I can find 18 different place settings that'll be beautiful for your wedding
Yeah,
because I love everything. And so it's really hard when you're going in and you're trying to say, this is exactly what I want and I'm not going to make a change on it. That's so hard. And even going in and trying to look at the options and figure out what's within budget is almost an impossibility. I mean, we go in with clients when we're picking place settings and, we typically have the rep from that business standing there with us and they're giving us price points on things because we don't know them either. And so we have to lean on them to help guide you guys. And then, I never want to show you anything you can't afford, but that happens more times than you can imagine because there's so many options.
definitely. Yeah. So I think just having a bit more guidance going into those types of meetings can be really helpful just so that you're not presented with just too many different things to choose from.
Yeah. So we've kind of gone down the path of talking about Pinterest and Instagram and we're heading into mood boards too because we did a
Yes.
mood board for you, but we
Mhm.
asked for your Pinterest board. So share a little bit of that with us because I think that was a little point of challenge or education that we missed that we could have done better on. And again, important for you to communicate to us about that. So
Yeah. So I think going into the whole mood board process, I don't think I necessarily had a really good understanding of what the purpose of a mood board was. And so I had an expectation of getting a brand new mood board that was different from my Pinterest board. And that wasn't really what happened. And you later explained that it was because I had a clear vision. You didn't want to stray too much from that. But I think having that understanding of what the purpose of a mood board really is, to give a clear snapshot to vendors would have been really helpful.
yeah. And while I thought we were clarifying that, I can completely see where that could have been confusing. And so, especially with you, because again, the whole reason why you're here today is that you're not the the s- the traditional bride. Like you were very organized, you were very on it. You came into it with a very clear vision of what you wanted, not so much what you didn't want, but what you wanted, which helped drive a lot of your decisions. And then you were very firm with your budget. You really said, I really don't want to go outside of this. You guys are a young couple starting out. We always want to be very respectful of everybody's budget. So when we had the budget conversation and then we had the Pinterest conversation and we went through that, then we get into looking at how we're going to put your mood board together. And it is a collection of what you have on your Pinterest board and some new ideas that we have for you. And so there was a lot of stuff on there that was from your Pinterest board because you had already, I think even in some cases, made some decisions. Like I think you had already picked some chargers and things like that. So
Mhm.
we were trying to honor what you absolutely wanted and give you a couple of new ideas, but also stay within budget. And so, yes, the goal is to give all of the vendors a clear snapshot of what you want, but we should have maybe explained that a little bit better that when you're that honed in on what you want and that clear, and not to put it back on you, but these are all things we take into consideration. When you're
Yeah.
that tuned into what you want, we don't want to veer from that too much. Even down to like the crane picture that you and your
Mhm.
mom and your fiance made that was part of your welcome board. Well, I mean, we would have never deterred from that. Like
Mhm.
that was something that was personal to you guys and, you know, folded it into the overall look. So I think that's important to know is that a mood board is different from, in my opinion, from a brand new creative from scratch design board. And I think maybe there was some anticipation of a brand new design board versus a culmination of what you had envisioned and what we could recommend on top of that.
Yeah.
Does
No,
that make sense?
I think that definitely makes sense. And, I think at the end of the day, the mood board was really, really helpful. And it was, what I needed to move forward in the process. And I think there might have just been a bit of misunderstanding on my part.
Well, I mean, look, that's why we're here. It goes
Mhm.
both ways, and
Yeah.
we want to avoid that in the future. And so that's why I think this conversation, this two-part series is so important for couples watching this, whether there are couples or someone that's just happened to watch this video. These are, I really think, great foundational tips for anyone getting started in this process.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the vendors, and we believe everyone has accountability in the process. Your
Mhm.
planner, your vendors.
Yes.
So let's talk about maybe what you did to bottleneck your process, if anything. Do you feel
Yeah.
like you did anything that bottlenecked your planning process?
Yeah. Definitely. I think I bottlenecked myself whenever I was procrastinating something or just hesitating on making a decision. I really think to the decor pieces that I probably procrastinated a bit on and left till the end of the process. And, the seating chart, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted, but for whatever reason, I didn't start it until 2 weeks before. And while everything got done and it was exactly how I wanted it to be, it definitely created a bit more stress than needed just to make sure that everything got done on time.
I think that's super interesting that that's the piece that tripped you up.
Same.
Because that was the thing that you knew. That was one of the things from your Pinterest board that you said, this is it. I want this, and we're not changing it. And we were like, okay, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I mean, and throughout the process, I kept looking at that exact same picture of this is the seating chart that I'm going to create. But for whatever reason, I just didn't start it soon enough. And then it just kind of snowballed into I was running around to FedEx and doing all sorts of things. And that just didn't need to be the case if I had just started a bit earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, because you rented the piece that your seating chart hung on. So you were responsible for creating the collage of frames for the table assignments, and then it was being affixed to the installation piece we brought in. And so, but it's funny what trips couples up, which again is why I wanted to talk about this bottleneck process, because I have a very clear idea of what I think trips our couples up, but it's what I think trips them up on our side that keeps us from being able to move the process forward for them. So with you were bottlenecking yourself. You didn't do anything that bottlenecked our process, but I'm going to transition it to that because the thing that I think most couples do that cause them problems with us is they tend to not read emails thoroughly. They tend to not answer text questions or email questions quickly, and then they hesitate on decisions. And we're kind of going back and forth on this decision thing because yes, make decisions, but know that you can change those decisions. The decision piece keeps things moving forward. If you change it later, usually by that time you've already thought through it and you can change your mind quickly. Well, I mean, would you agree on that?
Yeah, and I think that was the case whenever I changed something too. It wasn't that I was making drastic changes, it was just little tweaks along the way.
Yeah, so if I can give anybody tips, I'm going to say read the emails that we send because we do send somewhat lengthy emails, and that's because the corporate world I grew up on, I don't like to send a bunch of separate emails. Like I don't want to send you 10 different emails on 10 different topics. I'd rather say, here's your weekly wrap up of what we need from you, what's missing, what you should be working on, and then we bullet it all out so that you have one list to work from rather than, in my brain, looking at 10 different emails seems overwhelming.
Yeah. One, it was so helpful for me to get those emails because just like you're saying, everything is in one place. And I also think when there are 10 different emails, that's easier for things to get lost or things to get missed. So I really appreciated those.
Yeah. So again, the advice is going to be please read your emails that we send. And you were really good at that, and that did help keep things moving along. And then now we're in the day and age where so many people text and they don't necessarily look at their emails. So we've gone to texting a whole lot, which is totally fine. But your couples today want text questions. Okay, cool. So we're going to text you, but then I need an answer.
Yep.
And that's the piece that would get missed as they go, okay, let me think about that. And then a week or two might go by and I still don't have an answer. And so if you can not wait weeks to make a decision, that really helps move things along. Again, even if it's a decision you want to change later, let's make a decision and move on because at the end of the day, your wedding's going to be great. You're not going to make any life-changing decision other than to say, I'm not getting married. That's going to change your wedding day. And so yeah, those three things we think are really helpful. So when you're going through, you think back on all of this, what's your one big takeaway wrap up on how to go through this entire process?
Yeah, I mean, I really think being comfortable, standing up for yourself and what you envision for your day. And I think part of that is also being comfortable saying no. And not in a way of say no to be mean or anything like that.
Right.
But I really came with the perspective of me saying no to a vendor was only helpful for them to then suggest something that was more aligned with what I wanted. And so I think it is very helpful to say no. And so that was something that I got comfortable with throughout the process. And then, just really standing up for what you want. And if you're having a lot of opinions, being comfortable having those conversations about, well, why is this so important to you? And then you can make a more informed decision about what you want to do.
Yeah, and some might say those are hard conversations, but those are really necessary conversations.
Definitely, for sure.
Okay, and then my big takeaway to this is gonna be just communication is key. I mean,
Mhm.
everything that we're doing as planners is it's about communication. We cannot do anything. We can't pull off your day if we don't know exactly what you want. We can't tell the vendors what to do if we're not communicating to them what to happen. And going back to what you said about the mom and the videography and why that was important, that was a communication piece that you guys were able to talk through. So you have the conversation, not to say, "Mom, this doesn't matter to me. Why are you bugging me about
Mhm.
this?" But to say, "Okay, why is this so important? You're pushing it for a reason, so why?" And
Yeah.
then you know the why, now you're able to make an educated, informed decision, and that was all because of communication. So, I'm gonna beat that dead horse all day long as
Yeah.
communication is really, really key.
Yeah, and I feel like I always leaned on the side of over communicating because I mean, no one can read minds, and so I always wanted to give maybe too much information versus not enough.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, so that brings us to the end of our part 2 series, The Confident Bride. I hope that this information provided you with a sense of calm and direction as you go through navigating the wedding planning process, from how to get started to how to tackle the process to how to just make your way through everything. So, again, Zoe, thank you for being with us today and sharing your insight from the couple's point of view.
Of course.
And if you are planning with us now, then know that we are always just a text, phone call, or email away. And if you're still looking for your planner, well, then know that you can reach out to plan it with me.